Morena koutou. I declare the council meeting for the 7th of August open, and in doing so, could I remind councillors and staff that this meeting has been live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Regional Council website at the conclusion of the meeting. Could I also remind all those present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, councillor staff and members of the public for comments made during the meetings that may be subsequently challenged in a court of law and to be found slanderous. And with those comments, could I ask for an opening karakia from Councillor Thurston, please?
Colleague staff in the gallery, please be upstanding. Our thoughts are today with our colleague, Councillor Campbell, who's currently in theatre. Never let us forget we're forever in the holy presence of God. Almighty God, we ask that you give us wisdom in the decisions we make here today and give us guidance in working with our regional communities to promote their social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. First item on the agenda is apologies. So we have apologies being received from Councillor Campbell, Councillor Shirley and Councillor White. And at the moment we have Mr. Iti.
It's online.
He's online?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I move the adoption of the apologies from Campbell, Shirley and White. Seconded, Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. That leads us to the public forum. With us today, we have a presentation from the Lakes Water Quality Society. I'd ask the chairperson, John Gifford, and Don Atkins to bring your team forward. Please, John. And you have a presentation in terms of some correspondence that you've previously made between your organisation and this organisation through myself and the Chief Executive. And we look forward to your presentation that you have in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present to both yourself and councillors today. We greatly appreciate that opportunity, and hopefully by the end of today, you'll see that the community does have quite considerable concern around the issues with the Ōhau Channel Wall and the state of Lake Rotoiti. I'd like to acknowledge the team that's been involved in the development of the campaign of today's presentation. Without great support, it'd be very difficult to build what we're trying to achieve in this area. So I'd like to acknowledge the team and also the contribution from the Lake Rotoiti Community Association. Just for those that aren't aware, so my name's John Gifford. I'm the chair of the Lakes Water Quality Society. My background is very much in the area of aquatic sciences, and for the last 40 years, I've been involved in environmental related research. So I sort of feel that, you know, from my background, I do have some contribution to make into this space. And I should also emphasise that we're not here necessarily to present an entrenched view. We're really here to basically share a broader range of knowledge, which we think needs to start changing perhaps the narrative and move it from where we are today to what it could be in the future. So the purpose of our presentation today is to update Council on what's changed over the last 6 months or so, address some perceptions around potential misinformation, but particularly highlight certain inconsistencies, what we see in some of the information that's been presented. We want to expand on our letter of demand, which hopefully the Council's had an opportunity to see. We want to talk a little bit about the Community Technical Panel's recommended solution as we worked on that over the last 18 months. But I guess ultimately we want to emphasise that there is a need for urgent actions, and hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you'll understand why. In terms of recent developments, both the Lakes Water Quality Society in collaboration with the Lakes Rotoiti Community Association have launched what we call the Fix Ōhau Wall campaign. And that campaign started on the 28th of July. It's a joint initiative between our two societies, and collectively we have over 500 community members. The feedback from that campaign has been absolutely overwhelming. We've got substantial registrations on our website regarding the issues. We've had a really great response to our Facebook posts. And I guess more importantly, we're now looking to expand that campaign to spread right across the whole Bay of Plenty, because we all know just how important Lake Rotoiti is to the whole Bay of Plenty constituency, particularly Tauranga and Whakatane, as well as Rotorua. In terms of the current state of the wall, for those of you that have had the opportunity to view our website, you'll see that the degree of deterioration has been quite significant in the intervening period between 2023 and what we have determined in 2025. And I think it's pretty fair to say that the extent of the leakage at the moment is completely unknown. There's been no recent thorough assessment as to what the degree of leakage through the wall is. And we've just got a very short video here which sort of emphasises the nature of the way in which the water is flowing from Lake Rotorua into Lake Rotoiti and bypassing through the wall. If you play the video, Tony.
So just so everyone knows, John, foreground is the diverted water from Rotorua.
Yes. And this is the extent of the holes in the sheet piles, with those holes extending down a large part of the wall, obviously in the top 1 to 2 metres. But as you can see, those holes have extended quite significantly over the short intervening period from 2023. And this particular shot is really important. Don, do you want to just make a comment?
That shows that shot effectively is at the top end of and that's an island that's built up in the middle there. The water splits into a third, going one side of the island and the third going the other side of the island. What's everything going on the upside, one might say, that third, I don't think hardly any of that is going down the channel. It seems to be blowing through, as you can see, through the wall, because there's no current effectively around the back of the island. But, yeah.
Okay, so just moving on. Oops, sorry. Can we go back to the presentation? So what I want to do now is just talk a little bit about the condition of Lake Rotorua. So the society and everybody agrees that Lake Rotorua has improved significantly. There's no question about that. And all the data suggests that during the 10-year period between 2005 and 2015, there's been a marked reduction in the concentration of total nitrogen in Lake Rotorua. And this is at Site 5, which is the northern end of the lake, just before it outfalls into the Ohau Channel. But as you can see, as we get into 2024, it's still pretty consistent to the decade, 2015. But interestingly enough, the results for 2025 are starting to show a little bit of a drift up in terms of total nitrogen. And if you look at the chart at the bottom there, what we've done there is take the instantaneous concentration of nitrogen, total nitrogen, milligrams per cubic metre, multiplied it by the flow at the Ohau Channel. We've provided a range there because it varies obviously depending on rainfall. But the current load out of the Ohau Channel is between 172 and 195 tonnes per year. And that compares to the Hamilton quoted result in 2009 of 160. So when you look at those numbers, it's very difficult to convince yourself that there's been a huge reduction in nitrogen from Lake Rotorua, particularly as it passes down through the Ohau Channel wall and past Lake Rotoiti. My next slide focuses on the contribution from the streams into Lake Rotorua. And this is a summary report done as part of the PC10 review, completed in 2022. And that blue line at the top is showing the concentration, the flow-weighted average concentration of 9 streams into Lake Rotorua. And as you can see, from the 2000s onwards, it's largely been pretty static. And that is totally consistent with what we would have expected from the groundwater situation and the residence time around the catchments of Lake Rotorua. So yes, we've had an improvement. There's no question about that. And part of that improvement is directly attributable to the alum and the reduction in the total phosphorus. But from a nitrogen perspective, there's been little change. If we now look at the TLI in Lake Rotorua, and once again, this graph is supplied in the PC10 Science Review from 2022. But the key point here is that in 2022, the highest observed value was recorded of 4.43 TLI value since 2010. And if you look towards the right of that graph, you can see the increased height of those red bars. This is an anomaly plot, which is showing the deviation from the target TLI of 4.2. So the trend in TLI in Lake Rotorua is increasing, not static, not decreasing, but it looks as though it's increasing. And when we refer back to the actual specific numbers, in 2023-24, the recorded value for the TLI in Lake Rotorua was 4.4. And it's also interesting to note that those values of 4.43 and 4.4 are actually at the top end of the levels that were used for Lake Rotorua in the modelling exercise for Lake Rotoiti. And third and lastly, climate change is expected to increase TLI, not decrease it. So if you want to take a built and braces approach to the future of Lake Rotoiti, then you've really got to consider what the short-term impacts of climate change are likely to be. Now we change the focus to Lake Rotoiti and the issues in Lake Rotoiti. This graph is summarising Secchi disk, which is a measure of clarity. So as Secchi disk goes down, clarity is becoming less. And as you can see from that graph, if we look at the summer months, January, February, March, at Site 4 in Lake Rotoiti, which is right down the eastern end in the main body of Lake Rotoiti, you can see there's a clear decline in the clarity of Lake Rotoiti over those summer months. If we look at the nitrogen in Lake Rotoiti and we compare that to Lake Rotorua, which is summarised in this graph, the blue bars being the same as the ones you saw in the earlier graph for Lake Rotorua, two key things stand out. Number one, Lake Rotoiti total nitrogen looks as though it could be starting to increase. Lake Rotorua has double the concentration of total nitrogen compared to Lake Rotoiti. And if we're to meet the target of 3.5, which is the council stated policy for Lake Rotoiti, then we're not going to achieve that with a TLI in Lake Rotorua of 4.2. And that was one of the conclusions in the 7-year review for the Ohau Channel Wall. Algal blooms. Are algal blooms increasing in Lake Rotoiti? If you looked at this information, which once again comes from the summary report provided by the Regional Council for the monitoring results of the Ohau Channel Wall, you can quite clearly see from 2017 to 2024, there's an increasing frequency of red and amber alerts in the algal bloom or cyanobacteria counts based on total biovolume for Lake Rotoiti. If we now turn our attention to some of the corrosion work that's been done in the assessments by WSP. So this table here is directly taken from the latest WSP report that's been provided to Council. And I specifically want to draw your attention to the 2019 result, which has an average sheet pile plate thickness of 2.68 with an asterisk next door to it. And under the asterisk, it says, gosh, my sight's not too good, considered pitting holes affecting average thickness. So it raises the question, what happened in 2023? Were the pitting holes considered? And in fact, for that matter, were the holes in the wall in 2023 considered as part of the analysis of the average thickness of the sheet piles? And of course, if you're using average thicknesses for both average data for thickness and corrosion, there's a potential that that could be misleading. We think that it's important that both the worst case and perhaps best case of thickness and corrosion need to be provided and made transparent. And it's pretty clear that in certain parts of the wall, the average thickness is nowhere near 5.46 millimetres. And now if we turn our attention to the king piles, and the king piles are an absolutely critical piece of this infrastructure. If the king piles fail, then you've got to replace effectively the whole piece of infrastructure. And we're advocating that probably the king piles need to be protected as soon as possible. So these are the corrosion rates for the king piles, 0.35, increasing in 2023 to 0.39. But if you were to use some of the worst case scenarios for the corrosion rates for the sheet piles, then the corrosion on the king piles, particularly the webs, is increasing, could be increasing quite markedly. And if you take those corrosion rates, then there's a huge risk that the king piles will fail well before 2038, more likely 2028. And the king piles are, as I said, are a key part of this asset and need to be protected if we're going to continue to divert the Lake Rotorua water out of Lake Rotoiti. Is there a solution? Well, the community technical panel over the last 18 months has tried really hard to promulgate a solution. And this is one option that was definitely talked about and it's been presented to council previously. I don't need to go into the specific details of it, but it has been proven and been widely used in a whole range of different situations. If we look at the costs that were reported in the report to council back in March, it had a capital value of 25 million and an NPV value of 24 million. But when we've gone back to potential suppliers, not necessarily of the product, but of a service, who would then perhaps use this product, they believe that they could probably do something in the order of 14 to 16 million, not 25 million and not 62 million, as has often been quoted in the press more recently. And as I've said, if we want to protect the wall, then protecting the king piles is probably one of the most urgent things that needs to be undertaken. So just to summarise, the public concern is significant, both around the condition of the wall and the state of Lake Rotoiti. The wall is deteriorating. The video clearly shows that. And there's been a huge change since 2023 when the last full assessment was undertaken. Lake Rotorua water is not compatible with Lake Rotoiti. You can see in the video the actual apparent difference between Lake Rotorua water and Lake Rotoiti. But Lake Rotoiti is definitely deteriorating. It's got increasing nitrogen concentrations, the clarity is decreasing, and algal blooms are increasing. The sheet piles have failed, and if you take higher corrosion rates, then they're probably failing faster than what we currently believe. The king piles are corroding and need urgent attention if we're going to adopt a long-term solution and continue to divert the water of Lake Rotorua away from Lake Rotoiti. There's an engineered preferred solution, and its cost is more in the range of 14 to 16 million, not 25 to 62 million. We still believe that the Regional Council is in breach of its resource consent, and our recommendation is that you look seriously at option 4, go to the market, get an engineered, adopt a policy around adopting an engineered solution with competitive quotes. And finally, we think you definitely need to reject the recommendations for agenda item 9.3. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. Could I just say the Regional Council has a deep appreciation of your interest as chair and your colleagues in terms of the Lakes Water Quality Society, and importantly, the concern of the community in Rotoiti, who obviously have raised their concerns with you. So it's not as if we take this matter lightly. Councillors, any questions of clarification? Councillor Thurston.
Thank you, Chairman. John, as you know, we're under very tight constraints with regards standing orders as to what we can say and can't say in a public forum. But I just wanted to say to you and the team, our sincere thanks for coming from Rotorua today. We greatly value your input and your expertise. I claim to be a lot of things, but a number of things I certainly am not. I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, and I'm certainly not a researcher. So I weigh heavily on the advice and professional input from those people who are highly skilled in those areas. But what grieves me is that we've had a long-term relationship with the Lakes Water Quality Society. You've been in existence for decades. We've been in existence since 1989. I just want to know how we can get back to the table. Clearly, we're a million miles apart at the moment, but there must be common ground in the common interests of our community that we can find. Personally, as I said, I'm not a scientist or an engineer, but I weigh heavily on the input from our staff and the advice they've received, in particular from the University of Waikato. But the question I pose to you is, in light of your request that we reject the recommendations today being put forward, either in full or part, what are your solutions to moving forward? There was a huge haste with regards getting to this point today. Councillor Winters and Councillor White and myself slowed the process up to allow much greater community input. But the question to you and to Don is, how can we improve our connectivity going forward? Thanks so much.
Thanks, Councillor Thurston. I think just a couple of things there. One is that, you know, we value our relationship with the council. We understand that, you know, our whole work program is totally dependent on our relationship with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and so we value that incredibly highly. But at the end of the day, our role, our purpose, is to advocate for the water quality in the lakes. And I think one of the most concerning things for the community is that we've set a target, or this council has set a target of 3.5 for Lake Rotoiti, and at the moment, all the evidence suggests that we're headed in a different direction. And so if the council wants to change the TLI, well, it has to engage with the council. It has to engage with the public, with the community, and get the buy-in for that. And so I think we've just got to continue to work on this. I mean, I've certainly offered to the council the opportunity to meet and look at where we agree to disagree and where we agree to agree. And I think that would be a really valuable exercise. And if there's gaps in our information pool, then we work to close those gaps, but use good information and in a collegial way to solve that problem. But I think one other thing that is important here is that where we sit today, there is a need for urgent action. And if it's for no other reason, it's to protect the king piles, a critical part of that asset structure, which is corroding probably faster than what we actually currently understand. And if they're a critical component, then there needs to be a work program to get on and undertake that.
So just a supplementary, Chairman, are you recommending to us that we slow the process down today?
I don't think so, Lyle. I'm suggesting that you probably need to very seriously consider a resolution which activates the need to get on and protect the king piles. And if there's an engineered solution that can do that fast, then I think you need to seriously consider that option.
Councillor Neese.
One other point that I'd like to add,
Oh, sorry, Don.
Chairman, and that is that we have requested if there is any further information that would be causing the lake to decline, you know, scientifically. So we've asked Andy and his team, Professor Dennison, what are the other potential issues? We have not been able to get any alternative situation as a likely cause for the decline that we're seeing in the lake.
Thanks, Don. Councillor Neese.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming and talking to us, and I do appreciate your concerns. I've got two questions. Your videos, can you, you're using them extensively in your campaign. We have signage on the wall around health and safety and the fact that it's not advised for people to be in and around the wall, on the wall. For our reassurance with regard to liability with health and safety, can you assure us that you're not encouraging people to be in and around that wall and under the water, because there were photos of hands in close proximity to the holes, which we don't dispute, the holes are there, but we have a health and safety liability from a structure. So can you provide me with an answer with regard to that?
Yes. When we undertook those surveys, or got that video footage, it was taken from a canoe and a boat that was adjacent to the wall. So yeah, I don't think that there was any specific risk in relation to people being on the wall. Yeah.
Well, just another question. You're urging us to take urgent action. Any large-scale expenditure like that within council requires public consultation on funding. And there are a number of different ways that could be funded. Targeted rated to the Lake Rotorua residents, target rated to the Lake Rotorua and the Rotorua Lakes area, or spread across the region. And of course, there's quite a few different views with regard to that. So does that change your request for urgent action? Because it would need urgent consultation.
I mean, obviously funding is an important issue, and we recognise that. In previous discussions with the council where the funding issue has specifically been discussed, when that issue has been raised, it's been indicated to us that there are mechanisms within council to find funds. Now, I don't know the specific level of those funds, but I think if you were to look at prioritising what needs to be done, and if we set the focus on protecting the king piles, then I guess the question is there sufficient funds to support that activity?
I please add to that. So I'm Bob Smith. I'm on the Lake Rotorua Community Association. Community have been trusting regional council to fix the wall. This problem has been known about since 2014, and we're sitting here today with no practical fix option approved by council. The other point, so this isn't, we're requesting urgent action, but I want to make the point that this has been known about since 2014. Regional council commissioned an engineering report in 2017 that said there's significant corrosion in the wall, and that your calculations in 2017, not ours, were indicating 2028, those king piles were in danger. Now, we're just using your data. We're not introducing new data. So I think it's beholden on council. You've put us in this position that we're now in real danger to really, decide that you want to do something, because report 9.3 doesn't recommend that. It's a defer option. And secondly, the other point I'd like to make is if you come to Otara Marae on a busy Saturday, there'll be 100 boat trailers there of people from outside of the Rotorua community. And I would say 70% of those trailers are from Tauranga. So this is not a lake that is just used by the Lake Rotorua community. You have tourist operators. I watched the kayakers, hundreds, come from Tauranga on cruise ships, come across there and go to the hot pools, go there. So I really need to stress this is a Bay of Plenty wide, if not a national issue. So when you're thinking about funding, you have to think in that broader context, which is why when the wall was built, central government put in 4 million, because they recognised it was a national, not just a Rotorua issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Winters.
Oh, thank you, John, team, for your presentation. John, this one here, you agreed preferred engineering solution, the Combi Lock. Do those plastic sleeves, do they go all the way down into the lake bed? Or is that just sitting in the top 2 or 3 meters? Because they can't quite get it from there.
Yeah, well, they can go down and protect the full, protect an appropriate length of the king pile. Yes.
So is that quote, you've got 14 to 16 million. Have you got that in writing?
Well, it's certainly been discussed with them, and it's certainly been presented on paper, but it would probably need to be clarified in the context of a specific brief for what the council wanted to achieve.
But I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the 14 to 16 is not just the king piles, it was the sheet pile, the sheets as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the whole.
Yes, it's the whole.
Yeah.
It's the whole lot.
It's the king piles plus sheeting.
Bob?
Yes. I'd like to make the point that if you go to Ōrākei, this microbial action is now becoming an issue in marinas in the ocean as well. And you go to places like Ōrākei Marina in Auckland, they've had to do remedial action with PVC, similar system to that. Speaking to one of the engineers of the original 2017 report, they are now finding with environmentally friendly anti-foul on boats. Now, microbial action is increasing rapidly because the old anti-foul used to kill off the bugs and is no longer doing it. So if you go to Tairua Marina, that is built using a similar system. So this is a well-proven solution. We're not reinventing the wheel here. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, John. As you say in your summary, this is an agenda item in 9.3. You're quite welcome to stay and hear that debate. So once again, thanks for your presentation. And I think the commentary around this is in the joint interest of both your Lakes Water Quality Society, Lake Rotoiti community, and the Regional Council to find a solution to this. So please stay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Councillors, that takes us to the item agenda number 4. Items not on the agenda, there are none. Order of business. The only notice I want to give is that the order of business regarding the presentation from Quayside, we will try to run, because they're here in agenda item 9.5, we will try to capture the other one, which is 10.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Declarations of conflict of interest. So they need Councillor Crosby.
Yeah, 9.5 and 10.3 Quayside.
And myself, which is 10.3. Public exclude business to transfer into the open. There is none. Can we go through to the minutes of the Regional Council on the 24th of June? I move they be a true and correct record. Seconded, Councillor Von Duddleston. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Any matters arising out of those minutes that councillors want to raise? Councillor Winters.
Page 31. I asked a question in the Harbour Master Patrol Recruitment Agency on page 31 about their public liability. It's got it listed down here as $5,000. I think it should be 5 million.
But missed out a few zeros. Thank you, Councillor Winters. We'll make that adjustment. Anything else? If not, we'll go through to 9.1, which is Chair's report. I'll move the Chair's report. Any questions? I'd just like you to note, Fiona, that 18th of June discussion with MFE. This is an ongoing issue, whether it's MFE or MPI, in terms of the interaction with the land management people in the organisation. And I just think you've got to keep on top of that. Where are we getting to with this, which is essentially about data collection that may feed into catchment collectives. Anything else, councillors? Just to note, councillors, on the 20th of August, is it? You'll see that I went to the Primary Industry Summit in Christchurch. There was a very good summit. As a result of that summit, we have diaried in, which you will find a very interesting presentation from an individual called Michael Avery, who is a global strategist for Rabobank, has been for many years. He was out of Singapore. He was out of Hong Kong. He's now out of Singapore. So if you can put that in your diaries, you'll find it a really interesting presentation. Anything else? Has it been seconded? You did. Okay. I'll put the resolution, the Chairman's report be adopted. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. 9.2. I welcome the youth panel members, supported by Stephanie and Danielle. Would you like to come forward, please? Welcome, Stephanie, or Danielle, who's doing the introductions.
Tēnā koutou katoa, e rangatira mā. Good morning, councillors. My name is Danielle Guy and I'm a Community Engagement Advisor at Toi Moana and the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund Coordinator. It's my pleasure to introduce Phoebe Barrick and Jack Bowick, who were both summer interns and members of the youth panel this year. Phoebe is currently in her second year of an environmental management degree at Toi Ohomai, and Jack is now working for the Regional Council as an organisational support assistant. You would have received a report on the ECSRF in your agenda pack. It's item 9.2, and you can find it on page 40 of the PDF version. And we would welcome any questions at the end of the presentation. So to begin, a quick reminder about what makes the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund, or SSRF, special. This fund uses participatory budgeting principles, which means that the community proposes the projects they want to do and are given the power to decide which projects get funded. This is an approach used around the world to tackle inequity and involve the community in decision-making. In our case, Toi Moana asks schools, daycares, and tertiary institutions to put forward projects for funding and then allows the wider community to decide which projects should be funded. We also convene a youth panel to allocate approximately 1/3 of the total budget, which meant that this year, Phoebe, Jack, and the team had over $50,000 to allocate to SSRF projects. This project helps Toi Moana meet its community outcomes by supporting communities to nurture the environment, transition towards a low emissions economy, and get prepared for the impacts of natural hazards and climate change. I will now hand over to Phoebe to tell you a bit more about this year's projects and the key trends we observed. Oh, slide that says SSRF Projects 2025.
So this year, the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund had 50 projects make it through to the public voting round from a total of 57 applications. This is an increase from 38 in 2024. Over 50% of the applications received were from early childhood organisations. Only 4% of the projects were from high schools, and one application was from a tertiary institution. This meant that the projects were quite simple in nature due to the age of the children involved. The engagement team would love to see more applications from high schools and tertiary institutions in the future, as these groups are capable of creating more complex and research-driven projects. Engaging older students also helps build leadership and environmental action at a higher level with skills that can positively influence the wider community. Next year, the engagement team would like to work on targeting communications and building relationships with these groups. In terms of the range of projects, the majority were related to marakai vegetable gardening and sustainable water use. This may be because these projects are relatively inexpensive and simple to implement, which is a reflection of proposals submitted by the early childhood sector. There were only 5 projects that focused on climate issues, sustainable transport, and renewable energy. The fund would like to see more diversity and more projects on science or Mataranga Māori that are proposed for 2026. So this is something the engagement team will push for when promoting the fund. All the projects were great, but a few projects that stood out to me were St. Michael's Catholic School in Rotorua's Native Forest Sensory Walk, a bike shelter for Makoia campus, and Kitty-Wise preschools in Tauranga chicken coop renovation. My favourite projects are the vegetable gardens that are designed for the school and community use. It shows how small initiatives can make a big difference in local communities. So there was a good geographic spread of projects this year, with several projects funded from each district. It was encouraging to see such broad regional coverage, showing that the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund reached communities throughout the Bay of Plenty. Although the public voting process is beyond the control of the engagement team, the resulting regional spread does help them meet their obligations to co-funders by ensuring the contributions are used within the designated funding areas.
So taking a look at the statistics behind the voting this year. So this year we had over 1,500 votes cast, which was nearly doubling the 781 votes received in 2024. This could be due to just having more projects to vote for, or having 6 funding partners who help to promote the SSRF to their networks and contribute $115,000 in funding. So 69% of the voters were between the ages of 25 and 55, whilst only 3% of voters were school-aged. Ideally, in the future, we would like to encourage more tamariki and rangatahi to vote in future years to build awareness around environmental issues and Bay of Plenty Regional Council's role in protecting te taiao. And so 81% of our voters this year were female. This likely reflects the demographics of early childhood and primary school teachers who submitted the bulk of applications this year. And this is typical to online engagement, where generally women are consistently overrepresented.
Oh, actually, sorry, this one's me. The youth panel. So the youth panel is round 2 of our participatory budgeting process, and the panel has a budget that they can allocate to projects that were not successful in the public voting round. This year, we had 12 members with relatively good demographic representation. The youth panel had full access to the original funding applications, which was something new that we tried this year. We also held 2 online hui so that they could learn about the SSRF, the projects, and participatory budgeting. We encouraged the panel to debate the relative merits of the projects and to share their personal voting approach. They then voted independently, and the group's decision was final.
My experience on the youth panel was incredibly positive, engaging, and inspiring. It's a great initiative that brings young people together to share their perspectives and knowledge on important environmental issues and community projects. Through this experience, I gained valuable skills in collaboration, critical thinking, and understanding how community-level projects are assessed and supported. I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the decision-making process and help allocate funding that supports meaningful projects across the Bay of Plenty. It was especially rewarding to see funding distributed across all districts and to see young people learning about sustainability and encouraging them to care for and want to improve the environment through these projects. The youth panel members this year were from a range of demographics, backgrounds, and ages, which meant for great discussion and insight. The Youth Panel Forum was well organised, easy to follow along, and created an interactive and inclusive team environment. It is important that young people have a voice in environmental decision making, and I hope opportunities like this continue to grow and are implemented across the country. Being on the panel was a valuable learning experience for me, and I'm sure I speak for the other panel members as well. I look forward to seeing how the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund grows in the future. Thank you to the facilitators of the panel, fellow panel members, and the community for submitting their impressive projects. Thank you to the Council for providing the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund initiative.
Yeah, so similarly to Phoebe, I also had a wonderful experience being a part of the youth panel and helping to allocate the funds. As someone who's recently graduated and come from doing quite a wide range of research into so many different environmental issues that are going on, it's incredibly uplifting to see the amount of interest that the schools and the young people of the region have in protecting the environment and doing their part to support its resilience. It was also excellent to see the range of projects that were proposed by the different schools and the unique takes on how they can help the environment with their projects, and also just the focus that a lot of them had on also benefiting their local communities. It was a real pleasure to be a part of such a unique aspect of local government and to help in the decision making for this fund.
So what works with this fund? Our co-funders love the public voting and youth panel aspects of the fund. Indeed, TECT Community Trust is looking to form its own youth funding committee to distribute a pool of funding for youth initiatives later this year. So we look forward to seeing how that rolls out. The fund has also helped to build and strengthen relationships with some of our smaller and more remote communities, which was one of the original aims of the fund. By using participatory budgeting, we've given the community a voice in decision-making power. The number of fund applicants has also continued to grow, which means that the voting aspect has been successful and we've had enough competition. The fund is now in its 4th year of operation and has proven itself as an effective model for distributing funding. We would welcome any feedback from council in the future. To close, this year we've been able to fund 36 projects with over $167,000 from Waihi Beach in the north to Ruatahuna in the south and Torere in the east. We couldn't have done this without the support of our funding partners, so I'd like to acknowledge their support and enthusiasm for the project. Any questions?
Councillors, Councillor McMillan.
Oh, kia ora, and thank you so much. It's really uplifting to hear about this project and the way it just goes from strength to strength every year. I particularly love the way the participatory budgeting has sort of caught on. So this project is role modelling democracy and how now TECT, as you said, are going to be trialling that for their youth initiative. So I think it's you know, there's so many great aspects to this project, but to see that happening and hopefully, you know, for this, that participatory democracy or budgeting is something we're doing in this project, but maybe we can also expand that in other things that we do in Toi Moana. So that's really exciting. My question was really about some of those paint by numbers projects that come up over and over again, like the Mara Garden and the bike sheds, that seem to be pretty templatable. What I was wondering is, could they potentially be funneled off into a how-to manual where, you know, they wouldn't necessarily have to wait for the school sustainability funding round? They could actually do their internal fundraising and get ahead. So it could potentially evolve this kind of booklet or manual on some real easy climate environment projects for early childhood, primary school, secondary school, because you're seeing them kind of rinse and repeat every year. so that then you can really focus on these more nuanced ones. As you said, you sort of had less of the climate action, freshwater type stuff coming in, but then you could sort of evolve the program to fund more unique and bespoke initiatives and have those templated paint by number ones kind of as BAU. I mean, I know that is risking sort of saying, oh, we're not going to fund those, but I don't know, it could evolve like that. What are your thoughts?
Through the chair, kia ora, Councillor McMillan, for that question. We absolutely share case studies of successful projects from previous years, and they certainly inspire others and make it easy to put those applications forward. Where we have projects that are a closer fit for other funds, like the Environmental Enhancement Fund, we certainly point them in those directions. But that's something we can explore for next year in terms of how we encourage new and novel projects that are going to more closely deliver on our sustainability and climate resilience goals. So thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thanks for that, and some very interesting things coming through. My questions are really to help us about whether we've got the settings right for the funds. So I'm thinking about the outcomes, and in one way, it might be disappointing to see the level of engagement at secondary school. But I'm wondering if the best outcome is the fact that there are a group of secondary aged pupils who are now deeply engaged and are starting to develop the skills, and that then leads them into a career or a deeper engagement as once they leave school. In fact, which would be a fantastic outcome, even if there's not a project in the school. Likewise, at the younger ages, the fact that the children are getting involved in something practical creates a lifelong engagement in it. So understanding the outcomes, have we got those right in terms of how we define what's the value that comes out of this? The second, so I'd be interested in your feedback on that, but the second one is about timing. So I once was a teacher, or I got paid to teach anyway, and one of the challenges was all the number of people who want to run essay competitions and competitions for this, that, and the other. And unless it was part of the curriculum, you think, oh, no, this is just an extra. It takes away the focus for the students. So is this connected, or how do teachers get the opportunity to connect this? And if they need to connect it, then around about now is when you want to be engaging with secondary schools, because next year is too late. They've done their planning, people have made their options and so on. So I don't know if that's happening already. Is the revenue, is the funding a sufficient percentage of revenue to make it worthwhile for teachers to dedicate their time? Or should there be an outside, like a coach does for a sports team, engaged to make it and make it more likely to happen within a school? And I don't know whether that's happening. And the third idea is about whether or not. So once again, at secondary level, the kids are involved in all sorts of things, right? And they're starting to spread out from, this is what you must do, to these are all your choices. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to connect, say, with the youth enterprise scheme to say, oh, this is killing two birds with one stone. So it's really, have we got the settings right, or to allow you to be flexible in the way it's approached?
Through the chair, Danny, I'm going to have a go at a couple of these questions, and then I'll check in and see if there's anything I've missed. Thank you, Councillor Scott. In terms of the value of the outcomes, we ask that when schools or organisations submit their projects, that they identify the outcomes that they're going to achieve, and then we visit schools at the end of the calendar year to see if those projects have been completed and they've met their outcomes. So the goals that they're setting vary across the projects. We absolutely can and will report those back to councillors, and we'll invite councillors to attend those visits if they're interested and if they're available. We probably are not capturing the data in as consistent a manner as, say, some of the care groups, the environmental projects in terms of numbers of hours, numbers of plants in the ground, those sorts of things, but that's certainly something we can explore. With regard to timing of the school calendar, we ask for feedback from all of our applicants, successful and unsuccessful each year. I've yet to find a quiet term in the school calendar, but I take your point around getting in early. And the earlier that we can have partner funding committed for the coming year, the earlier we can communicate that. So it's now part of our long-term plan. We can communicate right now to schools that we will be doing this again next year. The scale of the funding is yet to be determined based on partner funding. We will be at the Canvas Careers Expo with our people and capability team for the next 2 days. We will be talking to a lot of teachers, and we will certainly be letting them know about the School Sustainability and Resilience Fund. Regarding funding as a percentage of revenue, I might defer to our economists for that, for more specific information. And with regards to the secondary schools, I think we're looking at any way to reach into those schools to get a broader reach. We had a lovely project last year from Te Puke High School that was led by a group of Year 11 students who wanted to have a more sustainable water collection to support their horticultural area. And that was driven by the students completely independently of their school project. They sought the support of their teachers and of their property managers and delivered the project on time and to budget. So fantastic if we can tie it into the curriculum, but we wouldn't want to be beholden to that either. Danny, is there anything you'd like to add to? I think we had 4 questions.
The only thing I would add is, I think, talking to teachers, even the teachers at my own children's school, is their capacity to take on extra projects at the moment is really challenging because of all the curriculum changes and the teachers needing to upskill with that. So I think that has been a challenge, and that's just at primary school level. So I imagine it's even more so at high school. But I think the idea around maybe creating some templated projects could be really valuable. And I think there's it's hard to place a value on encouraging children to take an interest in environmental issues. So I think, that it's sort of intangible, but I think there's certainly benefits in that. And I've even seen that with my own children coming home from after doing rat monitoring at school and predator trapping, and how excited they were and telling me all about the predator-free project. So yeah, it really does have an impact. Thank you.
Councillor Von Duddleson.
So can I just clarify then? So in terms of the structure of how we've structured the fund, you've got enough flexibility to manage everything. There's nothing that needs to change at the design of the fund.
Through the chair, yes, I think the fund is very flexible, and we obviously have our funding objectives and some criteria, but certainly there's room to adapt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic. I mean, if we can get young kids thinking about the environment at a young age, that carries through, and it gets back to the parents as well, which is good. But the data that you've given us on page 42 of your report, everything that all the graphs there are showing really good engagement at that very early level, but really disappointing at the intermediate and secondary level. And I think staff need to look at how we can actually get that interaction. So keep these kids going somehow, engaged in environmental work. And there are other funds, so that it might be just this fund, because you are doing good work across communities. So but it looks, just when you look at the raw data, it looks as if we're not actually, getting that spread right through the child's education span. And when we look at the member age, for participating in the voting, it does look like it's the teachers rather than the students. And I'm more interested honestly to get the views of the students than I am of the teachers. I want those kids to be engaged. So that's a challenge, I think, for your fund. I'm just hypothesizing how I see it. So if I've got it wrong, tell me. And I think that, as you say, the bias, gender bias there is based on the preschool, which is predominantly female teachers that have done that. So how do we get the kids to actually participate? Is there a mechanism that we can actually, get this to feed through? Because it shouldn't stop at primary school. It should go on to intermediate and secondary, and maybe it does through other programs like Trees for Survival, and there's several other projects around that. Are we missing something, or have we got it covered?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Von Davison. We agree. We'd love to see more applications coming from intermediate and secondary schools. Part of it is a numbers game. If you look, say, within Tauranga City, we have 9 secondary schools. We will have hundreds of early childhood centres. So that plays into it. We also had some secondary school applicants who later withdrew their application because they were already working with our rivers and drainage team and our land management officers, and were getting great support for the environmental project over the longer term. So absolutely, we'd love to grow that participation of young people and from intermediate and secondary schools, but this is just one mechanism that councils working with young people.
All right, last one, Councillor McDonald.
Kia ora koutou, thank you for the great report. My question is to you, Steph. My question, and then I'll just make comments before you answer. And my question is, has there been a reach out to Kura Kaupapa Māori? And if so, what has been the response from them? Just a comment I want to make, because you mentioned that you're mindful, mentioning around looking to explore Mātauranga Māori. So hence my question, and just comment that around the Kōwai Mātou program, which looks at fresh water from a Māori perspective, they have about entered in this council chamber school children that are involved in that whole freshwater monitoring quality process. So just some thought about where Māori children are participating there. And when you come to answer my question, how do we then encourage them to also participate in this process? Because the other value that I see in this process, I think the biggest one, is encouraging the participation of young people and rangatahi, and particularly around encouraging them to participate in the decision-making process, which I think is a real value in what you're doing in this project. But let's go back to the question I asked at the beginning.
Through the chair, kia ora, Councillor McDonald, for your question. I mentioned to a couple of the councillors before the meeting that while we as staff have our favourites, we don't get to decide, and so we strongly encourage as many applications as we can. And it was wonderful to see applications coming from Kura and Kohanga Reo, as well as Wharekura. And I certainly got my kids to vote on my behalf. They did log in through my account. I guess one of the ways that we try and encourage that participation is by showcasing previous examples where we have seen those projects work and succeed. And the Kura and the Kohanga have certainly been featured in those examples. Danny, with the support of our communications team, set up comms to education centres all over the region, as well as in the general media. And I might ask Danny if you want to speak to a bit more around that, around how we tried to reach out.
We have an excellent distribution list that's been compiled by my predecessor, Jackie, over the years, which reaches all schools and early childhood centres registered through the Ministry of Education website. In regards to Kohanga Reo and Kura Kaupapa Māori, we had 4 Kohanga Reo submit projects this year, and all 4 were successful. And the favourite project that Steph referred to before was from Te Kura or Porere, and they were the Kura Kaupapa Māori project. They had a fantastic project looking at combining Western science and mātauranga Māori, getting the children out there, measuring change over time at the beach through time lapse photography, doing environmental monitoring. It's just a fantastic project. And I've already asked the Tumuaki if we can go and visit later in the year. So that's I think we're getting fairly good reach, and certainly the projects were all very successful. 100% got through in the public round. Yeah.
I'd just add, if there are thoughts or suggestions on how we can get greater reach, we'd certainly welcome them from councillors, and absolutely have asked that from our youth panel as well.
Okay, look, Phoebe, Jack, thank you for your participation and stewardship in this program. As you can see, the interest from councillors is always high, and it's fair to say this awareness in terms of young people getting involved early, even at primary school, is important in terms of the future journey of their life in terms of environmental stewardship and science. So well done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Stephanie. And we look forward to seeing you here next year with an increased budget of 167 from 50. Many thanks. Thank you. Right, councillors, 9.3 O'Hell Ward, Mr. Berea, James, Deere and Neroy.
Happy to move that the resolution, the school sustainability report.
Thank
be
you,
received.
Mr. Winters. Second, councillor Nees. All those in favour say aye. Thank you.
Chair, can I seek some clarification from you before we get into 9.3?
Yeah.
With regards 9.3, we've heard the call for urgency. We've heard the estimates of the cost. We politicians have been committed to harnessing the community input and expertise, and I think it's fair to say that we have a differing view to staff on this. We've heard the call for environmental protection, but what concerns me greatly is that we have been told today that the Lake Rotoiti Community Association and the Lakes Water Quality Society oppose the recommendations that we're going to be debating and discussing today. So I would hate to think this whole exercise is an exercise in futility, because once again, I urge us all to get around a table and sort this out, because speaking personally for myself, my thought was that the recommendations that we would have brought to us today would have been signed off by the various parties who have been participating in this process over some period of time. So I'm getting totally confused, particularly with the fact that one of the major influences in this have clearly signalled today their opposition to the recommendations that we're going to be considering today. I'd value your comments.
Thank you, councillor Thurston. You should be under no mistake that the ultimate decision body, making the decision body in regards to recommendations made by staff, is the forum of elected members. The document that we're referring to in terms of the agenda item 9.3 has been publicly put up on the website as part of the discussions of today's, and the persons making the commentary in the public forum are entitled to make that commentary. But as I said, ultimately the decision rests with you as elected members. You have, in terms of this recommendation, a recommendation from staff which comes through the chief executive, and you will either agree or disagree or seek some modification to that, but the decision rests with you. So before we get into the discussion on 9.3, Andy, I think we'll take the paper as read. I don't know what you're proposing to do in terms of going through the whole thing, but the chief executive would like to make a comment.
Thank you and good morning, councillors. Yes, it is very disappointing that we could not get particularly the Lakes Water Quality Society to be joined with us in terms of recommendations to council. The Lakes Water Quality Society has made it very clear to me that they are taking legal action and a campaign against the Regional Council. So it's in that context that staff have moved forward. We have spent many, many hours with the Lakes Water Quality Society, provided them with the information so that they could provide information to you. I am concerned about the information, the misinformation in the community. And in particular, I have asked the Lakes Water Quality Society to be very clear that they're providing facts to the community. I have gone back to them in particular in terms of some of the information on their website that is not factually correct. And in particular, information about algae blooms, which they are attributing to the walls leakage. That is not correct. And so I'm in that process of getting that corrected, because one of the things that the Lakes Water Quality Society is very clear about is having factual information and evidence. They've been extremely good about that throughout many years. And so that is what we're seeking to do. We would welcome the opportunity to progress this more closely with the Lakes Water Quality Society. But we're at the moment in a position where they have let me know that they have a well-resourced campaign that they are running. So that is the context in which staff are bringing the recommendations to you today.
So Fiona, could I just seek some clarification? Our involvement with the Lakes Water Quality Society and their technical group, is there any information from the science perspective and the engineering perspective at WSP that has not been shared with Lakes Water Quality Society so they can make informed recommendations?
We've shared all the information. We've had multiple meetings. We've had meetings with the University of Waikato, hours and hours of meetings in terms of sharing information. And there is a lot that we agree on, and I think the staff will focus on what we agree on today.
Thank you. Councillor Crosby.
Just quickly, my understanding of this report is a piece of the puzzle around developing a framework to make decisions, which is pretty standard in major engineering processes, albeit this relatively a new process. So I think we need to understand what we're deciding today. It is around a process to actually make some decisions, hopefully the right ones to get on and make the appropriate investment.
Right. Mr. Engel, Mr. Berea, who's leading out?
Thank you, councillors. Good morning. We've tried to keep the report brief on page 49 of your agenda. In the introduction, I'll just remind you that this follows on from a report in March, 27th of March to the council. And at that time, council asked us to pause the trials and asked that a strategy be developed and more engagement. And that's in the italic words there. So that's what this report back is what you've asked for back in March. And I'll just hand over to Andy. We've just got a few slides here. If you have time, we'll take you through what we've been doing.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Just before I get started through the presentation, we've also got Professor Dennis Oskondacha in the background, and particularly if there's any questions around the water quality issues. And also on the Zoom link, we've got our WSP engineering expert, Gary Chalmers there, who's of course leading the engineering aspects of the work we're doing. So we've got a slide presentation now. I'll just see if I can get that. Slide. Yep, that's worked. Just wanted to give you a bit of background and context and a wee bit of a recap, and then particularly then talk about the decision strategy, because that's what the council asked us to come back with in March this year. So we've achieved that, and then talk about some investigation funding and the testing options. Just background and context, you probably recall all of this. I'm not going to go through it because I think the Lakes Water Quality Society has probably talked enough about that today. And so we're at 2023 is our last dive inspection, and we have another dive inspection, of course, programmed for 2026, which will give us the updated information as to the corrosion rates, and we'll use that, of course, to get an assessment as to what are the issues with both the sheet piles and the king piles. Going on to the water quality, just very briefly, initially when the wall was constructed, it was a very important intervention. Nobody disagrees about that because Lake Rotorua had a TLI of something like 5 and it was significantly compromised. It improved Rotoiti water quality, and we've got that report from 2023, which was the report on the performance of the diversion wall and the water quality modelling. And Rotorua has improved obviously because of the alum dosing and the land use, the catchment land use changes that have occurred since that time. We're not saying, and we've never said that Rotorua is fixed and the job's finished. We've just said that it's improved significantly and it has actually reached a target at times throughout the last 12 years. And so the main conclusion from the modelling is that there isn't a particular urgency to fix the holes in the wall right away. The urgency is to ensure that we have the right engineering understanding to ensure that if we do a fix, then the fix is actually a proper fix. So that's probably a big apprehension around doing anything. If you rush into it, then we will be in the same situation in 10 years' time as what we are now. And of course, the other thing around is the water quality and the concerns around climate change. And we've got programmed in to do over the next 12 months water quality modelling with the University of Waikato to understand the implications of climate change, and particularly to understand what's the magnitude of that impact and also what's the timing of that impact, because it'll be really important to understand that in terms of the timing around when we should fix leakage in the wall or not fix leakage in the wall. So this is what we call the dynamic adaptive planning process. So this is a strategy to assist council in making decisions as information becomes available through trialling, monitoring and water quality modelling results. And so it's got all of the options on the left-hand side there. And at the moment, we're in the yellow box there, monitor and investigate. And that's what we've been doing through the strategy that was developed in 2017. And that's what helps support us understand the risks around those king piles failing. And then we've got the various options of minimum structural repairs where you don't necessarily fix the holes, but you support the wall so that it's not going to fail. Then you could fix the wall, fix the structure as well as fix the holes. So that's obviously a higher cost. Then there's other options, option 4 and 5, which is either wall removal or full replacement. And there's some costings around all of those options. And the reason that there's such a big range between 23 and the $62 million is that if the king piles can be supported and the microbiologically induced corrosion can be prevented by some type of encasement, then the cost is likely to be closer to the 23 million. If that's not the case, then the wall needs full replacement. And then the cost around replacing a wall in the manner that it was originally constructed would be about 62 million. And probably the other couple of things that are important to note about that diagram is that at the moment we're following the yellow line and we're recommending that we remain on that for the time being, but we need to do some minimum structural repairs at least by to the end of 2027. If we move then through into either just a minimum structural repairs or structural repairs and whole repair, the advice from WSP at the moment is that the king piles are in a structurally sound state until 2038. If we weren't to do any repairs to those king piles, any protection, any action to control the MIC, microbial induced corrosion, then the wall would no longer be suitable. It would have to be removed. So then there's the options at any point in that information being provided to move down to the green line or the blue line. So that's how that diagram works. And I think the next slide is to hand over to Niroi so he can talk more about the proposed activities in terms of the recommendation for trialling and testing that the wall can be repaired.
Thanks, Andy. Can I just jump in very quickly there before Neroy? So the diagram you've seen there is the dynamic adaptation pathway planning is a system we've used quite successfully in council for the community-led adaptation space. And you may remember in the Waihi Beach, that community has used this system quite well. Perhaps Andy didn't mention is those diamond-shaped things that are arranged along particularly the yellow line, that's councillor decisions. And the first one to the left of the line is today. So your decision today will influence which line we take or whether we stay on the yellow line. And then in a year's time, there'll be another decision point, and then the year after that as well, unless you switch tracks at that point. So this provides quite a great deal of flexibility, I think, for councillors to make whatever decision seems right at the time. Over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Morena, Chairman, councillors. A lot of this information has been covered off already, so I won't dwell on it too much. But yes, the next inspections we're going to be doing on the Ohau Wall is next year, and that'll reconfirm some of the numbers we have around our critical timeframes there. There's been a fair bit of conversation around the need to trial, and we believe it's really critical to do those trials. And we've spoken to the community technical panel members, plus also some of the contractors with teeth in the game, and possibly the numbers that was advertised earlier by the Water Quality Society around one proprietary system. We've been talking to that contractor and had involvement from the community technical panel, at least one of the members in that communication. And I guess I just wanted to cover that off a little bit, but that number is a rough order of cost. And when it goes into our engineering estimates, we have to factor in, say, for example, peer reviews to concrete encasement. The option of the solution that was spoken around $14 to $16 million doesn't address concrete encasement on those king poles, which are, and as the Water Quality Society have mentioned, and we've mentioned, are the main structural bearing component of that Ohau Wall, and specifically towards the sediment level, where the most amount of force is acting somewhere into the sediment. So I've just got a couple of diagrams here, just to quickly run through the existing wall on the left-hand side, top of the wall. I think you guys have seen some of this from our March meeting as well. But the do minimum option, option 2, and the short-term option, essentially the same option. And we know that above the waterline, the steel is in reasonable condition there, and there's thickness there. And then there is a section around 0.5 metre to a metre below the waterline where the holes have developed. So that do minimum option is to be able to tie those two sections together to reduce that deterioration or hold it together on the sheet poles themselves. And to be able to do that short term, or the option 3 essentially is an infill panel to stop water passage. So in terms of long-term solutions there, like I said, there's a few ways that we can do the long-term solution, but we are reliant on concrete encasement on those king poles. And so we've spoken to a few contractors here, and to do those long-term testing, there's benefit there, because as we understand it, microbial-induced corrosion and concrete encasement in fresh water is quite a new scenario. And from an engineering point of view, it's really good to be able to keep or to be able to test it for a duration of time. Just in terms of going to the market and to the need and want to trial over the next 2 years, we have had communication with various contractors, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we couldn't approach those contractors for the trial works themselves. And I think there's some benefit there to understand what contractors are out there. So that could be a procurement approach to trial, and then as per the DAP process, to start making our decisions after 2027. And then finally, I just wanted to add, there's budget there in the LTP in the next 2 years to be able to do this trial work, and we believe we can do the work we need to undertake within that budget. Thank you.
Can I just add, thank you, Neera. I think there is a common ground here with Lakes Water Quality Society and Lake Rotoiti Association in that we agree that the king piles are the most critical structural component for this asset. And we do urgently need to do that trialling to see if we can arrest or stop the corrosion of those king piles. So that would be my priority recommendation, is that we are allowed to use the funding available to proceed with those trials. Thank you.
Okay, and just the last couple of slides there, just other actions that will need to take place. But I've talked about the water quality modelling. There's also some consent approvals required to do some of this work, because the resource consent that we achieved 8 years ago was for continuation of the wall. So it didn't envisage any construction work. So there's some new things going on there. And we've also done community engagement. And I think you understand we've had the community technical panel. Unfortunately, we're a little bit apart in terms of perspectives there, as you can understand from today. We've met with Rotoiti Community Association. We meet with them regularly at their annual general meetings, as well as we joined in with Lakes Water Quality Society to a meeting in the middle of last year to discuss with the community the issues around the wall. And we've also commenced some iwi engagement with the, we'll shift the slide along, sorry, with the iwi groups there. And some of that's reported in the agenda. And we've met with some senior staff of Te Arawa Lakes Trust recently, and they'd like to give us more information on their view of this, but take that in front of their taiao before they do so. So we're welcoming that information. And so just finish with, yes, we've got the recommendations in front of you. And a really important aspect is that trialling to understand whether the king piles MIC can be curtailed or controlled with the methods.
Thank you, Andy. Prof. Dennis, would you like to come up and take a seat at the front here? I'm sure you're going to get some questions. So I've got questions, Councillor Thurston, Winters and Nees. Councillor Thurston.
So, Chairman, we've heard a lot today about the dynamic adaptation pathway planning model. And we've heard that the community technical panel has assisted staff to date to refine the engineering solutions. I'm reminded of Churchill's great expression about war and the jaw, not war. So I may seem besotted, colleagues, today about us all being on the same page and hunting together, but I am needing some assurance today from the Chief Executive that with regards to the DAP, the decision-making strategy going forward, there will be a role in that body for the community technical panel.
Absolutely. Yes, we're very keen to continue to have everybody working together. That is our intent.
Councillor Winters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I'm really disappointed with this report, because I thought back in March we asked for a preferred option to come from our staff and the TAG group. Sit here today and see that we're going to do this decision-making matrix, which means effectively that nothing's going to be done for a couple of years in terms of its construction of a solution. And that disappoints the hell out of me, Mr. Chairman, that I'm disappointed that we are still a couple of years away. I'm happy to go with a trialling process in terms of, but I think there probably needs to be 4 or 5 different options all installed at the same time by the same barge, because I can't see one contractor coming along and putting in 20 metres of something and another contractor coming along, because this is going to be an expensive installation process. So I need to see 4 or 5 genuine trials of solutions, Fiona, because the previous trials we've had is just slap a few bits of plastic on the wall and coupled together with a couple of D shackles. What a waste of time that was. So I want to see genuine trials. And if the combi lock system is the way to go, then do it, trial it, cost it out, and give us some confidence that this is the right way to go. Because I can't see, I'm really struggling with these 4 recommendations today, because it's really deferring the whole construction till a couple of years away. And whilst I might be leaving the building in a couple of months' time, Mr. Chairman, I will not be taking my eye off the ball in this project. Yeah, it was my fault as Mayor of Rotorua. I dropped the ball in terms of the due diligence from our engineers at the time, and it's come back to bite me big time. So I'm not going to allow this to be a second time in terms of a solution, a long-term solution going forward. Dennis, can I just a question to you on the numbers?
Just before you do, Kevin,
Yeah.
can I just make a small correction to your understanding?
Yeah.
If you look at the DAPP chart, there are decision points both in 26 and 27.
Yep.
So to infer that there'll be no decisions made for a couple of years is not quite right.
Well, it's
So you
based
do
on-
have, the council will have the opportunity relative to the advice coming forward to have those interventions you're talking about.
Yeah, but we've got an election coming up. It's going to be 6 months before councillors are up to speed again on this project. There's another science review, and so the whole thing is dependent on another science review. And we know the trend here, and I'm going to ask Dennis the question, in terms of the trends that he's seeing here from the 2022 and all those that John presented today. That's all your work, isn't it? It's all verified your work.
That particular work was not done by us specifically. That was done by one of the science providers that participated in the plan change 10 review, but it was independently peer reviewed, that work.
Sorry, it was independently peer reviewed.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not pie in the sky stuff. It's the trends are there to say it's not fixing, we're doing a lot of work, but the trend is there. So when we come back to the 2026 science review, we're going to see a similar trend. And that's what disappoints me, Mr. Chair.
So Dennis, I think this is an important point. I mean, trend analysis is dependent upon a suite of testing samples that give you the trend. So in the terms of the peer review, is this a trend or is it a statement of a point in time?
So the underlying those graphs, there was a formal trend analysis that was carried out and identified the direction and the magnitude of those trends. Answer your question?
Thank you.
We're already seeing the trend. And I think the science review is going to concur that trend is tracking on that path, what we're seeing now. So it disappoints me that we're going to sit on our hands for 2 years.
Councillor Nees.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to follow up on something that the Lakes Water Quality Society presented to us, and that was the photographs of the wall with the cloudy water coming through along its length. And they noted that they hadn't been advised of what sort of volume of water was actually coming through the holes. I think we've been advised that it isn't a lot, but I'd like to know what actually is the cloudiness. Is it is the water less clear, or is it algae, or what is it that makes it look so different and so dramatic when you see the difference between the cloudiness or the colour of the water coming through the wall and Lake Rotoiti water? So are you able to tell me, have we got absolute estimates of how much water is coming through? Has that been modelled, and can you advise us of that? And what is the substance of the difference in the appearance of the water that is obviously coming through the wall?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The answer to your first question is no, we don't have absolute numbers on how much water is flowing through those holes. We used estimated flows in the 2023 7-year review, and we highlighted the uncertainty around those estimates in that report. In terms of the cloudiness of the water that's coming through the Aho Channel, that's obviously directly affected by what's going on in Lake Rotorua. So if there's an algae bloom in Lake Rotorua, the water will appear greenish. The cloudy color is consistent with what we know in terms of algae coming through the system and some turbidity related to suspended sediments as well. But in terms of quantities, we don't know.
Chairman, if I could just help also with that answer, what's coming through the wall? What's the visible thing that you can see coming through the wall is cyanobacteria, and cyanobacteria resides in the top part of the water column because that's where the light is. So the visual effect of it will always be bad because you see that stuff, but there's a whole bunch of wall below that point where the water is still getting diverted. The other thing, and Mr. Atkinson made the point about algal blooms, and if has the University Council got any other particular explanation for those blooms? And that's a really good question, and we support his question on that because we're looking at satellite imagery for our scientists that indicate that the blooms are generally establishing in Okawa Bay independently of what's going on with the wall. So it is an important question to be considered. And I think where that leads us is certainly you could spend a lot of money fixing the wall, but if you don't fix the problem, you're going to get a lot of questions from the community. What the heck are you going to do next? So I think that's a really important aspect to understand what's going on.
Thanks. Okay, can I just ask Dennis one question in relation to that? Dennis, the inference was made that the blooms in Rotoiti are driven by the cyanobacteria coming out of Rotorua. Is there any evidence to differentiate between the DNA makeup of the cyanobacteria in Rotoiti relative to Rotorua?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. There would be, but I don't think that's necessary. So the way the Regional Council currently monitors cyanobacteria is at species level. So that's done through microscopy, where the person can identify the actual different species.
Yep.
And the analysis that was presented last time on that actually showed quite clearly that the species that occur in Okawa Bay are very different species that are coming through the Aho Channel.
Thank you. Councillor Nees.
Okay, so going forward, I actually think we've got a really serious problem, and I don't agree that that it is not as pressing as staff are telling us. I've been around long enough to know that TLIs fluctuate quite a lot depending on climate and all sorts of other factors. And the fact that we're looking at it now and saying, oh, no, it's probably not going to, it's going to stay like it is now, or it's only a slight increase, or it's decreasing over here. I think we can't be certain of that. I also feel that whatever we do, we need to expedite our work. So I pick up what Kevin says about let's do the trials all together along the wall, because I would not like to see that we're taking 2 years to do a range of different trials sequentially, and I'm not even sure whether that's what staff are recommending. And then we just we get a report. Well, I won't be here, but that's by the by. Council gets a report saying, well, actually, this is looking promising, but we need to do some more work. So I think we've got to throw everything at trying to find a solution in the short term. I've also got a question around our current consent. Would it cover all of the trial work that we would want to be doing, or would we have to be getting another consent to make sure that we're doing that we're able to deliver some of the trials that we're proposing?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Yeah, look, we are trying to do these trials. It makes a lot of sense to do them all in one hit if we can. There are different ways that the trials have to be done, like the shorter term trials, potentially a dive is in the water, whereas those longer term ones are the bigger contractors you need to involve. But already we've had contractors that we've worked regularly with, and plus the recommended contractor from the community technical panel come to us saying, hey, yep, we want to get involved in these trials if we're allowed to. So yes, makes sense to do the trials at the same time. Those shorter term ones can be done a lot quicker though than that long term one. Yep.
So if we requested that there be a small part of the wall that's trial with the interlock system, would that be a problem?
No, so the company which supplies the Combilock system, they're able to do their system or trial, or have the need to want to trial their system, but plus also have the ability to trial the system that maybe we were recommending as well. So there is a potential. At the end of the day, I guess it comes down to being fair to contractors as well, and those are things through our procurement system that we probably need to look into. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess my position is we throw everything at this and we try and get the answer sooner than perhaps has been recommended here. Also, I do sympathise with the community who have been quite concerned about this for a long time. And I wonder if there are any other solutions that we can do in the short term. So I'm sort of thinking maybe trialling alum dosing in the Lake Akawa Bay. Is that even an option, just to give the community some sense that something else is being done in the short term while we're working our way towards a longer term fix?
Perhaps, Mr. Chairman, if I go back to the consent question first. Yes, we will need resource consent for this work, possibly the trial work as well as the long-term fix. So that's.
But Andy, is that a variation to the consent or a new consent?
Possibly a new consent, but I don't know that that makes it any different. It's just the process that we go through. And so it's a matter of assessing, of course, the impact of the works to do that. And then going ahead in terms of trialling, yes, we did do some trials, and although there might be some contrary views on that, our view is that they were very worthwhile trials to understand, because it gave us an understanding of the complexity of fixing things to the wall temporarily. And that's probably the reason why we're also saying there's not an urgency to fix the wall immediately, because of the water quality improvement in Lake Rotorua, and because of our understanding that the blooms are not being driven through the wall and then down the lake. There's another reason for that, and we don't necessarily understand that, but we know that there's some other causes. And so we think it's important to understand the engineering fix first to make sure we can control the MIC, and also to understand what's the water quality implications of doing this. Because as I say, you could spend a lot of money fixing the wall, and if we don't fix the problem, the community won't be satisfied with that.
That's my point, asking about alum dosing in an area where there is a lot of algal blooming occurring on a regular basis and has happened for a long time.
We did undertake alum dosing in Okawa Bay in the past, and the feedback from the TAG on that alum dosing was that it didn't really achieve anything. So it's not something that we would recommend doing at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Von Duddleson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just first of all note that when we look at the presentation we had this morning, we had, the Rotorua Lakes total nitrogen, for instance, we had decade spacing for over that period, and then the last one where they said it's starting to increase was only a 1 year from the previous year. So it's not like for like. So be very careful with when you're looking at the research that it is comparable. What I would like to know is, and I've never picked this up, is the deterioration of the wall consistent across the whole length of the wall, or is it more pronounced where at the source of the water, where the water first hits the wall?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Across the whole wall, there is variation through with corrosion rates, and we do utilise average numbers. We have about 24 sites across it. Potentially, and again, it depends on how we look at those numbers and how often, because we as part of our structural management plan, we're monitoring it. My understanding is there isn't that much variation across it. Gary, I don't know if you're online and whether you've got any more that you can offer to that.
We'll come back to it.
No,
Oh, here
I
it
think,
is.
no, I would support what you've said. It varies along the length. Some areas are worse than others. I think the future dive inspections would focus more on those actual the holes. As you've said, we're taking an average, and then that's been applied to the structural analysis both prior to and after the installation works you did a few years ago.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Oh, thank you. I am supportive of the recommendations and supportive of these trials happening, and also the DAP process. I think that's a robust process that allows us plenty of decision-making moments along the pathways. I suppose I'm greedy because what I would like to see is great water quality in Lake Rotorua, Lake Rotoiti, including Akawa Bay. So I've got a couple of questions. One is, obviously you're going to be doing the trialling of the impacts of climate change and having a look, so this is to you, Dennis, to see trends, with climate change. My question is, will the impacts, and you may not know the answer to this yet, will the impacts be across both lakes, Rotorua and Rotoiti, as opposed to impacting Lake Rotorua but not Rotoiti?
Thanks for that question. The work is currently scoped out to focus on Lake Rotorua and the catchment of Lake Rotorua as part of the Plan Change 10 review. And the implications for Rotoiti will be discussed within the scope of that work. But we're not explicitly looking to model climate change impacts on Rotoiti as part of this work stream.
Yeah. And then my other question, and it has been touched on, is around, and Councillor Nees talked about this, but around discovering more about what is causing the algal blooms in Akawa Bay, and then what can we do about it?
Sorry, I'm not sure. Is there the question?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm not clear at this moment in time how much we're looking at what is causing those blooms, and are there any land use change interventions that we can put into place in those areas? Like we're doing so much work around Lake Rotorua that I'm really supportive of, and we've achieved so much and are achieving so much more with our actions around land use change and land use management. And if the algal blooms in Akawa Bay are also a cause by land use or land use management, are we looking at interventions there, or do we not even know yet what's causing the algal blooms there?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, sorry.
So the short answer is not necessarily. We can make some educated guesses, but I think there is definitely scope for understanding the behavior of Akawa Bay and those algae blooms better to come up with ways to improve the situation there. We haven't tackled that directly, but certainly something that from a research perspective would be quite interesting.
Yeah, so I'd like to move these recommendations.
Hold on, no, I'm not going to take the resolution at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
There's a few
Okay.
more questions, but Dennis, to answer Councillor McMillan's questions, essentially the causation of algal blooms is pretty well understood. It's a function of temperature, turbidity, in other words, wind. And they don't occur in the middle of the winter; they occur in the summer. And if you got really adverse atmospheric conditions, wind and rain and that, they tend to dissipate. It's a benign temperature thing. So the causation is relatively well understood, wouldn't it be? No?
It's not a yes or no answer. I'm sorry. We know all of those factors that you outlined and many more are driving algae blooms. The relative importance of those obviously varies across the year and seasons and depending on the water body. With regards to Okawa Bay, which is comparably very shallow area, it's relatively isolated from the main body of the lake. The relative contribution of those factors is not very well understood.
Okay, I've got a question for Gary, then Te Tauri White's got a question, or he's got his hand down. Are you there, Gary?
I am.
Right, thank you. There's been commentary on the king piles, and your WSP review said the king piles would be relatively stable, or probably the wrong term, but good until 38. Lakes Water Quality Society put on the table today, they think it's probably closer to 28. When you use 38, was that an unrecoverable position in terms of remediation of those king piles, or a position where they could be remediated?
The 2038 was that whatever we elected to do needed to be in place prior to that 2038. So past 2038, we would have compromised the capacity, if you want to put it that way, of the king piles to resist the wave action that they were designed for.
Okay.
So, and I think it's probably worthwhile adding that that is a current figure, in that as the diving works takes place and we actually do the remeasurements, that will go up and down, and it could come down, it could go out.
Okay, and the other part of the question is that the corrosion is occurring in probably the top meter, Leroy. Is that similar with the king piles as well? It's only the top meter or so.
Well, all we know on the king piles is what we've been able to measure from bed level up to the top of the piles. And as Leroy's pointed out earlier, a key consideration is, do we have MIC below bed level? Because if we've got MIC below bed level, that's the point where the maximum demand is on the piles in terms of them bending, whereas when we get towards the top, it's much less. So if we were saying, do we have any potential fatal flaws in what we're discussing, it would be that MIC continues for some distance below bed level, and it's pretty critical with the investigations. We understand that it does not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor White, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, look, I've been listening with interest, obviously, because I'm a constituency member. I'm Ngāti Pikiao, and I'm also Ngāti Te Takinga, where the marae is and where our land attaches to one end of the wall. And we're on the borders or on the shores of Lake Rotoiti and Rotorua. So I'm getting really perplexed by the tensions on the science and the engineering perspectives. From our side, we've got WSP, we've got Waikato University. On the other side, they've got their science interpretations, and there doesn't seem to be a connection happening. You know, so that's the dilemma for me. I will go by the best science and best engineering. So where does it sit? We've employed WSP and obviously Waikato University. So my leaning is there. But is there a conversation that can be had between the two factions to give me comfort levels that actually we're getting the solution right, and the timing of this can actually happen with some urgency, not in a hurried mess that we end up in a mess. So I'm just confused here. I just want to find that reconciliation point, because we're also being threatened by being taken to the court. I'm happy if we've got the best information, we hired the professionals to do the damn job for us. I'm happy for whatever recommendations come down to us to make. But right now, that tension between the science and engineering on both sides of the fence is confusing me and concerning me. I do support my colleague, Councillor Thurston, his concerns he made earlier in the day. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about going to court. I'm worried about having a reconciliation of the best information on the table. Can somebody ask, is there a possibility around the parties coming together and sorting out the science and engineering so that we've got something concrete that to go on? Because at the moment, I don't feel we have.
Thank you, councillor White. So councillor McMillan, I'll take your moving of the recommendation, but I want the chief executive to give other councillors some comfort around here by adding some further points to 4.
So through you, Chair, the other recommendations I am proposing is that council notes that all investigations and options will be expedited, which is something that you've asked for. And in particular, I draw your attention to page 50, and that the investigations include inspecting the integrity of the king piles 2 to 3 metres below the lake bed, trial concrete encasement of sample king piles, trial the short-term repair options, and review structural integrity of the wall following the 2026 dive inspection. But we will look to expedite those based on this discussion. The other recommendation is request further options for improving Lake Rotoiti water quality be progressed and reported back to council, which is what you have been asking for in terms of if there's anything else that can be done for Lake Rotoiti.
Happy?
Can we
Yeah,
add the
happy
words
with
with
that.
urgency to that, Chairman, please?
Sorry?
Can we add the words with urgency to that, please? No, but the last comment from the chief executive.
Yes, happy to
Thank you.
request further options for improving Lake Rotoiti water quality be expedited and reported back to council.
Okay.
So is
Excuse me,
everybody clear?
just a
Councillor Mills.
question. The trialling of a portion of Combi Lock, is that a possibility?
Yes, that's what I understood we would do as well. That would be one of the options.
But I'm confused, Fiona, because Andy said we need a resource consent to do the trials.
I'm sure they will sort that out.
Well, expedite the resource consent as well in terms of the solutions going forward. How do we do?
It is what it is.
I think,
We have to.
councillor Winters, you know, there's issues called urgency, and I'm sure the staff will sort this out rather than go through a full consultation in terms of resource consent. Your concerns are echoed by the community, so let's just get something done as suggested by the chief executive. You happy, councillor McMillan, with that
Yep,
change? Do we
happy
have
with
a
the
seconder?
changes. Yep.
Seconded, councillor Von Duddleston. No further discussion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We're adjourned for morning tea. Oh, what's the time now?
We got a lot of.
11:27, 11:45.
Yes.
We will reconvene. As I stated earlier this morning, what we will do is we'll put the rubber to the road and get through the rest of this agenda. Then I've rescheduled the Quayside Toi Moana Trust Statement of Intent to the last item in the public. We will then adjourn the meeting and deal with the confidential briefing of Quayside. When we've done that, so they'll go run back to back, we'll come back into the council meeting and sign off on the confidential stuff. All good? Right, Mr. Fraser, we are dealing with the variation to the amendment to navigation safety bylaw.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. Apologies from John, our Harbour Master. He's home unwell at the moment, but our Deputy Harbour Master is here if you have any questions of him. This is a fairly procedural paper giving life to direction that the council has provided us before in terms of some amendments to the NAV safety bylaw. So happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Mr. Winters, questions? You're moving it.
Starting now.
You move. Thank you, Councillor Von Duddleston. Councillor Winters.
No, I'm not moving it.
No, it has been moved though.
Oh,
The floor's yours.
Reuben, why do we have to go out for consultation? Why can't we, as a council today, make a decision to accept these two amendments into the 2024 bylaw as per that were dictated to us 6 months ago? Nobody in their right mind is going to worry about consultation on these two amendments. If you're a boatie, you shouldn't be in the shipping channel. And the Harbour Master's already made that declaration that no big boats go between Motiti and the other, the Astrolabe. So why do we have to consult?
I'll defer that one to Stephen, if that's okay, Councillor Winters.
Yep.
Good morning, councillors and chairman. There are obviously two issues here. The exclusion zone, you could argue you may not have to, but for the anchoring in the channel, that affects a large part of the population. We are unsure exactly who is part of that group, so we do need to consult with that particular group on that particular issue. So whilst we might argue that it's a no-brainer, it is something which the community currently values, and we are changing the way they operate. So we are wrapping those two things in together into one consultation process.
And I think that, sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, the other part of that is, as you know, we do have John's Harbour Master direction in place for the exclusion zone. So essentially that status quo, that does continue while this consultation process happens.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Neese.
Can I just...
One more then?
Yeah. Can't this council make a decision today just to accept the two amendments? Forget about the consultation. Who's going to have a go at us?
I suspect the Local Government Act says otherwise. If there's a significant issue, we're required to consult. So it would be a substantial risk to say no one is going to object to what we are proposing on the pitching and anchoring issue.
Councillor Neese.
Just, I completely support the consulting on those two changes. The one part of the report I have a bit of a problem with is on page 82, and it's about the amendment, the wording amendments of rules. And the one I'm concerned about is 3.9.1. And I believe the wording that you are proposing is a little bit unclear, and people may not understand what it means. You say, no person will launch a vessel from any area of the shore which may be identified and marked by the Harbour Master from time to time as a no launching area. So, I mean, what does that actually mean from time to time? Does that mean that it's a designated area that will be, well, not designated, but it's an area where commonly the Harbour Master might be saying you can't have launch from here because we've got an event? That's, you know, people won't know which areas they're talking about that rule applies to.
So clearly there's a degree of discretion in this, and it would be holding on the Harbour Master to be very clear about, you know, where this no launching area was. A good example here is the lakes. When the lakes are full, people start launching from different areas across reserves, in areas where they wouldn't normally go there. So it's to basically for the harbour master to come in and say there's a temporary stop being put here to stop this happening for safety reasons. There needs to be the discretion because we don't know where these areas are yet. If they are boat ramps or permanent areas, we know where they are and they are controlled already.
Can I just ask you have another look at the wording to actually make it crystal clear that these will be signposted on the day sort of thing, if that's what is proposed? Because saying it's marked, which may be identified and marked by the harbour master from time to time is a bit too unclear, I think, and maybe misinterpreted.
Will do.
Thank you. Any other questions? It's been moved by Councillor Vaughan Duddleson, seconded Councillor McMillan. All those with
Through the chair, for legal reasons, can we just pass the resolution in a really clear and set sequence? If we can commence by 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you can pull for those first, and then we just follow the in sequence down. It will be helpful. Thank you. That is on page 68 of your agenda. I'll bring them up on the screen for you. It's purely a sequence thing. It's no changes.
So which ones do you want us to run first?
1 to 4.
Happy, Councillor Vaughan Duddleson, thank you. Seconded, Councillor McMillan. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried, thank you. 5 to 6, 5 to 7?
5 to 6.
5 to 6. Okay, moved Councillor Vaughan Duddleson, McMillan. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. And 7. Winters? No. Oh, you know on that one? Okay, thank you. Councillor Vaughan Duddleson, number 7. Thank you. McMillan, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Regional Software Holdings, 9.6.
Dear Chair and Councillors, this report essentially presents to Council the final statement of intent for Regional Software Holdings Limited, following Council's consideration of the draft statement of intent early in the year. So this report just highlights changes between the draft statement of intent and the final for Council to note and receive the final statement of intent and agree with it, that there's no formal feedback required for the final statement of intent. Happy to take the report and accompanying attachments as read.
Happy to move. Thanks, Mr. Winters. Second, Councillor Vaughan Duddleson. Fiona, you were director of RSL. Are you still not, or are you gone?
I am stepping down, and Matt Taylor is going to be a director in the future.
Okay, no problem with us.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I just have a question. It talks about a purpose being high quality shared services. This is great. But I'm really questioning accessibility for users who particularly have some disability, might be blind, low vision, because I don't see any measure or component of what accessibility means in there. How is that captured?
So through you, Chair, are you referring to the action that is on the BOPLAS work program for rating invoices?
I'll be raising that when we come to BOPLAS.
Right.
But
Yeah, okay. So I'm very happy to take back that question to RSHL in terms of what they're doing to improve the accessibility of information. They are an entity that sits as a back office entity, so to speak, so they don't have they don't directly work with customers. But having said that, for example, with the regional integrated ticketing system, that is one that is directly related to customers. So I can follow that up and provide you with information.
also, not only customers, but staff. I mean, there's all sorts of users, so.
Yes, yep.
Councillor Neese.
Just a question, because I hadn't realised how involved this RSHL was in the implementation of Motomove. And I'm just trying to actually go through and just check to see if there was any measures related to that. My understanding is that there aren't any measures.
So through you, Chair, they are the holder of the back office for the regional integrated ticketing system. And so that's been working very, very well across all the regional consortium. That will be replaced by Motumove in the future, which is that national ticketing system. So at the moment, this entity holds the back office for the regional consortium interim ticketing system. And I think you're quite right, there is not a specific measure in related to the RITS program. It'll be covered by some of the quality measures that are generic across all of the programs that RSHL deliver.
Does RSHL have much influence on the project management and delivery of that product?
So we're in a very good position that we have a director on the National Ticketing System Board, and I'm the CEO that meets regularly with the NZTA about Motumove. So we also have, we are heavily involved in that program, particularly because of Matt Taylor sitting on that board.
And we're comfortable that this SOI will help get a satisfactory outcome with regard to that project.
So we're comfortable that with the regional integrated ticketing system, that's working very, very well, and that will continue to work well as the back office through RSHL. They don't have a lot of input into the national ticketing system, so that has its own board and program management.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. 9.7, Kamaran. LGFA, take it as read.
Yes, councillors, thank you.
Happy to move, Chair, and I'm particularly pleased to see the rate funded assistance scheme, potentially being activated by LGFA. Just to remind you, that could potentially be another toolbox to support healthy homes, development levy contributions, a whole range of activities, including the lower cost reverse mortgages, unfortunately, for those that have to use them.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Scott, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Our hardy annual. God bless. Councillor Scott moved.
No, I want to ask a question. So on page 219, there's on page 219, there's reference to ESG. And when I look down at the focus on social sustainability, there's no mention there of, for instance, people with disabilities. Now, my understanding is that I did raise something earlier on, and my understanding is that the Tauranga invoices are now readable. So whoever's responsible for that, really appreciate that that's been done. And apparently the water bill will be on the way. But it is just an example of having to be aware of that social responsibility is much wider than just by the one group that was mentioned there. So I would really urge, in terms of a statement of intent, that these things are captured.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, and I will take that back to Bob Lass. And the action that you requested, I'm really pleased that has progressed. So that was a very important action, and that went through the year that has just been and didn't wait for a statement of intent.
Right, you moved, Councillor Scott. Moved, thank you. Councillor McMillan, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 9.5. The win. Thank you for your perseverance and holding on. As you might have heard me say, we're going to run this and then we will adjourn the council meeting and deal with the next agenda item, which was scheduled for after the council meeting. Councillor White.
Yes, just noting my conflict of interest, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Noted. Right. Statement of intent.
Okay. Kia ora, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present. Today, we'll just go through the high level of the statement of intent and note that it comes on the back of a very successful year which we've completed, and we'll bring those results once audited to the council in the near future. So what are the outcomes we're looking for from the statement of intent? Well, there are 4 focused outcomes that we've identified. So the first one is maximising the value from the Port of Tauranga. And that is obviously such a key part of our portfolio that flows into enabling the second one, which is delivering a resilient dividend to the council. And under this year, that is $48 million and growing year after year. So it's important we get that built in a resilient manner. The third one is transparency in our performance. And that's really around being your trusted investor and absolutely working on the basis of no surprises. So early warning and total transparency around where our income comes from and where our costs lie. And the last deliverable for us on the outcome is an organisational review to ensure that we continue to strive towards being a high performance organisation. So those 4 outcomes all fit nicely under our purpose, which, as you'll know, is to grow a responsible and diversified fund for the long-term returns to the benefit of the Bay of Plenty. But the key comes to how are we going to do this? And in that area, we have our work divided into 3 strategic pillars. And I'm going to ask Lyndon to talk to those in detail. But the first one is delivering commercial results and how we structure and program our activities around that. The second one is being a corporate and relationship leader. And the third one is creating an engaging place to work. So with that, I'll hand over to Lyndon.
Oh, kia ora tātou. Lovely to be back in front of elected members. In respect of the commercial results, as you well know and has been set out in the statement of intent, we do have 3 different parts of our portfolio, which is again very much designed to provide true transparency around the different components of the portfolios we have under management. I'll touch on the Port of Tauranga first. As you well know, it represents sort of circa 80% of our portfolio. Over the last 12 months, as we've also indicated, we are taking a more active role as the majority shareholder. And I am pleased to say that the conversations we've been having with both management and at a board-to-board level, I think are proving to be very beneficial for both entities. As we know, over the last 12 months, we also have an approval and a mandate from the council to potentially or enable to potentially divest the Port of Tauranga. As we've been very transparent with the wider community and with the council, we will only do so when we think it's the right time and with the right process. So we are continuing to take our time in pursuing that potential divestment. Also very pleasing to say that the share price has well and truly rallied over the last 12 months. And I guess from a total shareholder return perspective, that will flow through to our set of accounts over time. From an investment portfolio perspective, that is a pure divestment, a diversified portfolio made up of equities, direct investment, private equity, and property. I guess just worth sort of flagging from a property perspective, the success that we're having out of the Tauranga Crossing investment, where we are a 40% shareholder, that is trading well. And as you can see, the Panorama Towers is starting to take shape as well. And we have largely fully let the space that has been available there to a medical fraternity. So that is going to value up incredibly well over time. Another really important part is the work we've been doing around getting our foundational documents in place, and that is to ensure we can fulfil our intergenerational mandate, but also provide a very consistent and transparent dividend flow back to council. And those 3 policies are our SIPO, our treasury policy, and our distribution policy. And it is vital that the 3 of those documents actively talk to each other. From a special purpose asset perspective, and our regional benefit project in Rangiuru, I can say over the last 6 months we have been really thrilled with the progress we've been making out there. Not only from a development perspective, if those that have driven past here recently, the way that the stormwater pond is really coming to life, and you can see the plants, flora and bird life really returning. So, from an environmental standpoint, that is absolutely fantastic. But actually commercially as well, we are well and truly ahead of program in terms of our section sales. We've sold around about just under 10 hectares, so well and truly ahead of program. But also in terms of the value points that we've been hitting, that has been above where we've forecasted in the past as well. So that's positive, and I think a sign of the economic, the wider economy starting to come to life. So great to see that demand flowing through there as well. From a corporate and relationship leader perspective, I'll get Mark to talk to this as well. As you know, we've spent a lot of time making sure that we've got our subcommittees well represented. We've got some exceptional independent experts in our investment committee. And we've also established a divestment committee as has been articulated in the past. But Mark, I may just get you to talk to the succession planning and the likes as well.
Yeah, so the board and management are working very, very closely together, and the board holds management to account on succession planning, and the board themselves have gone through a process of succession planning, and I know some of those topics will come back up to yourselves. We also engage through that a board survey, and we are just about to undertake an interesting survey, which will be around identifying and understanding our diversity of thought. That'll be both at board and management, so that we can optimize the inclusive contribution of everybody in the room, even if they think completely differently. So that's the next level of board and management performance that we're about to go into. And then connecting across the community, boards and management can sit in isolation in your own little bubble. But I think one thing that we have pushed really hard, and management has responded, and the board is actively involved as well, as connecting across the community, across iwi, across other key stakeholders, showing our progress at Rangiuru, being proud and connecting more widely locally, but particularly for management, connecting to other trusts and other investment companies and partners across the country and globally, so that we're in on deal flow at the early part. As we get more and more professional, we need to be at that front end to know where can we get in and where can we optimize value. So look, there's a lot going on, and the last one on that is we have completed and published our first climate-related disclosure requirement. It sounds so simple saying it like that. It is a massive piece of work. Really proud of management. Davide, the CFO in particular, has led that. That's been published and has had excellent feedback. And now it's the implementation of the plan.
The last part is just making sure that Quayside's an engaging place to work. Thrilled with the ongoing step up in the engagement surveys that we undertake every year. This year, we're about to embark on our one, I think it was issued today, but for the last 12 months, we've sort of been sitting around 78%. So that's fantastic. To Mark's point, we're now in the process of implementing our climate transition plan. My chair is indeed correct. That's there is a huge volume of work associated with our publicly listed requirements in that respect. And also pleasing from a stakeholder engagement perspective, we have received our Net Promoter Score results back, and that sits at around 91% by any stretch of assessment as a quality result. So look, in summary, the year that's gone has been one where I feel that we've really weathered the storm incredibly well. I feel we're incredibly well positioned for a very successful future.
look, there are some clouds on the horizon, whether it be geopolitical or domestic. Clearly, we've got local government elections and the likes as well. But that also presents a significant level of opportunity that I think we are now as an organisation, with the relentless pursuit of high performance, are incredibly well positioned to take advantage of those opportunities. And we are very much looking forward to updating the current council, and no doubt there will be some changes in the seats with the upcoming election. We'll look forward to briefing the new council representatives in due course.
Right, thanks, Lyndon. Councillor Nees.
I just have a couple of questions. Oh, firstly, congratulations on the great work that you're doing and the results that you're getting. I've just got a couple of questions about some of your measures, and I'm sorry if I should have picked up on this earlier. But under your strategic pillar 1 commercial results, you've got a measure that you appointment of a minimum of 2 directors on the board of Tauranga. So I wasn't quite sure what you meant there. Is that because under the Port Act, and we can only have a maximum of 2 council appointments on the board, either staff or members. And so are you suggesting that this is appointment of a director in the AGM process, in which case it's any person that you've appointed, or is it a person additional to the 2 members that are currently representing Quayside and the council, that you'd be influencing the appointment of another director if you wanted to go above the 2?
So the first part is it is the 2. So that's the key focus. Part of it is a signal of engagement with the port, where we're actively engaging rather than being an activist. I just want to make sure everyone understands there's a big line there that we don't cross. But it's also to be involved in what do they want as a high-performing port board. And so with the chair coming off in March next year, we're actively engaged with the chair of the port to say, so what do you want? I mean, we could toss a coin, we could, there's lots of ways you could do it, but actually the Port of Tauranga is already, a pretty high performing board, and we want to make sure that that's enhanced. So from our side, and in the 2 appointments, that's the first part, and that's the most important part. But also it's just understanding appointments that they make. As the key shareholder, we would just like to be informed.
So should that read appointment of 2 members? Yeah, okay, thank you. The next one is around governance, and you've got majority independent board, 4 out of 7 board members are independent. Now, I'm aware that it's our directors' policy that drives how many independents and how many council reps there are. So just wanted to check that we've got new council coming in, and at any time they could say, actually, we want to revisit the directors' policy. So just to make you aware that a change could come along, which would mean that you couldn't meet that. But I just wanted to flag that one. And then lastly, on the Toi Moana Trust, page 131, it notes the commercial value of Quayside's investment in the Toi Moana Trust. Well, in fact, my understanding is it's council's funding, but you're investing it for us. I just wonder whether it should be framed a slightly different way. And the reason I raise this is because we recently had a presentation from PwC, and in the presentation they obviously indicated that they thought that the Toi Moana Trust was Quayside's, and it's not, it's ours. So I just wonder whether that might need some adjustment. It could be Quayside's investment of council's funding or something, just to make it accurate.
I think in our mind, we're very clear on this is not our putia, and we are investing it on behalf of the regional council in line with your SIPO expectations. I think going forward, we'll make sure that language is clear.
Could I just add, Jane, that the original comment about 2 directors, the Quayside has historically been what I would refer to as a very passive majority shareholder. So the port have decided who they want for directors, and Quayside has historically, the AGM just signed that off. What the chair is suggesting is they'd like to be involved more in the consideration of the suitability and who those independent directors may be to a degree higher than what they've done at the moment. That's what he's saying.
Then check the adjustment to the KPI might not be the right adjustment, because you are looking to reach further into the port board, and using your influence. Is that what I'm hearing from the chair?
I don't want it to be misinterpreted. We're not trying to run the place.
No.
It's absolutely the Port Authority, but as the listed or as the majority shareholder, we want to have a discussion. And when you talk to the Port, they have historically said they have a much deeper discussion with the ACC, who owns about 3 or 4%, 1.3% than they do with us. And it's like, okay, the rules are changing, and look, we're doing it respectfully. We particularly chair to chair, CE to CE, and investment manager to CFO. We are having regular engagement, and it's going well. Right now, we're at the next stage where we're proposing that we actually formalise an MOU of engagement that just says, look, I don't really care how you did it in the past. We're a different organisation as Quayside now, and we're a whole lot more active. And we want to understand asset recycling. We want to understand what you're doing in Northland, not ahead of the market, because there's clear rules, but we want to be a really good, active, responsible majority shareholder. And having a consultation discussion around director appointment, we think is healthy. At the end of the day, the Port Board is still accountable, but we'd like to have that engagement.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there, eh? Councillor Scott?
Yes, thanks for that. Three things. One is, you mentioned the induction has been one of the, change of council has been one of the challenges, I think was the word you used, which amused me a wee bit. But I'm interested in, have you put any thought, because you could come to the new council with, issues that you're facing. You can come with as an information about this is where we are. You can come with pleadings. This is what we want from you. And I'm not asking for an answer now, actually. I'm just asking that those things be considered in the mix. And because I can remember from 3 years ago, the information dump is huge. And so the effectiveness of how you engage in that first 3 months will be very important to making sure that the new councillors hit the ground running. Second thing's a little bit that I was thinking the Quayside has a lot of lead information about how the world is going, right? Because who's taking up leases, what sort of deals are coming in terms of private equity, what forward bookings there are, through all sorts of things. And so that would be very useful information to share. It'd be helpful from a regional council organisational point of view in terms of our future planning as well. So if that information's within the group, it's just to keep top of mind, neat to share if there's something in particular which is useful. And then my final question is about the climate implementation. And I know you've been under, or you get a whole lot of questions about why can't everything that's poisoning the Mount area be moved out to Rangiruru, and that somehow solve something. Are you still under that pressure, and how are you dealing with it?
There is a little bit of pressure on it, but less so than before. I think it ultimately comes down to, and we've had a very interesting discussion at prior year's strategy day around who comes to Rangiruru and why, and do we have exclusions? And there was debate, for example, around bitumen companies, cement companies, and our original discussion was, gee, we don't really want them. It was also discussed that we're building our entire industrial estate out of bitumen and concrete. So we have to be a little bit respectful of what we say versus what we do. But our conclusion was, look, we're open to anyone that comes in, provided they meet a high environmental standard, compliance standard to a world-class facility, and we would engage. Hopefully that answers your question.
And maybe I could also just round out, we have spent time presenting back to the Clean Air Accord as well, to make sure that they're aware of the Rangiuru proposition. I do need to respectfully remind people that Rangiuru also has neighbours. So it's just to replace like for like, I don't think it's going to be an acceptable outcome for us.
But the story in a way is, because you're exactly right, you're going to just transform one problem somewhere else. But if as a result of anyone making a move, you're driving an improvement in overall, New Zealand Inc. emissions, then that's a fantastic outcome.
Okay, nothing else? Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Lyndon. Yeah, can we remove I'll move the resolution that we accept the Quayside Limited and Toy Minor Statement of Intent 25-26, and there's no formal feedback required. Councillor Thurston, all those in favour say aye. Against. I'm going now to adjourn the council meeting. And live stream, aren't we?
Yeah, can we just get a mover and second?
We need a resolution to adjourn. No? Okay, move Councillor Winter, second myself. All those in favour say aye. Against, carry.